Hey guys, it's Faerie Grace, and I am starting a new series where I want to educate, entertain, and inspire you to go after your purpose and calling. In this series, I'm going to be interviewing several people and organizations that I think will help me accomplish that. Musician and composer, and we're both going to meet him for the first time in detail of exactly what he does. Come on.
Bill, you can call me Bill. I go by William professionally, but feel free to call me Bill.
Okay.
And yeah, this is my little corner of the earth, so feel free to come on in.
I love it, and I want to thank our cameraman, my
thank
spontaneous
you.
husband, who jumped in and is here doing whatever I tell him. Thanks, husband. All right, Bill,
Yeah,
where would you? First of all, amazing.
Thank
How about
you.
we get a shot of?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is where I work.
I'm just inspired being in this. Is this not amazing? I mean, I want to sit there. I want to sit here.
Yeah, there's a lot of places to sit. We really could sit anywhere.
Wow. All right, tell us where we're sitting.
We normally sit in here. This is where I like to chat with people. But
Okay. Bill, thanks again so much for letting me interview you. It's a privilege and an honor. And again, as I was telling our guests, that my premise of this new series that you're starting out, so you're setting the bar very high, is to educate, to entertain, and to inspire people to fulfill their purpose and their calling. So go ahead, tell our friend out here, what do you do?
Okay, yeah, so I'm a musician and a composer. I make music out of a lot of different kinds of sounds and sound design. So I do that for film clients and commercial clients, whether it be trailers, documentaries, films of that nature. And I also have a project called Earth Tones that I've been working on for about the last decade, and I'm coming into the completion of it now. And that is a project dedicated to creating music out of the sounds of the earth. So I've traveled all around to record all sorts of different landscapes and animals. And the idea behind the project was to explore the way that humans and nature interact, collaborate, and conflict. And then not only to observe the environments through sound and music, but also to kind of explore how a relationship with nature could help our mental health, which it did for me immensely.
Okay, first of all, I want to unpack everything you said. Okay. You're all so composed and you're just saying things that are blowing my mind. First of all, your resume, repertoire, whatever you want to call it, I can already tell it's off the charts. And I want to unpack some of that quickly. When you say you do this for companies, commercials, expand on that a little bit before I'm chomping at the bit to get to these earth tone things you spoke of.
Yeah, sure. So, I've done a bunch of different things over the years. Like there was a documentary called Blood Memory that I worked on, which came out a couple years ago that was on America Reframed. And that was about the untold story of America's Indian adoption era and how so many of the kids from different tribal communities were taken away from their families. And then the efforts that were made by some of these same tribes to restore healing to their communities and reconnect. So a very beautiful, powerful, important story that I was really lucky to work on. I did like a Powerade commercial, a commercial for that was on Vice, that was based on a shoe that Adidas was releasing, all made out of recycled plastic from the ocean. So that was one where they asked me to make the music out of ocean sounds and kind of do my earth tones process for the project. I did have my music in a trailer for Deepwater Horizon, the Mark Wahlberg movie that came out 2016. So just sort of a mixture of different things. And there's been some short films, some student films I've done, a real mixture of different things. Like I did sound design for this one guy's ballet that he was doing. There was some other composers who hired me to do sounds for their films. So a real mixture of things, and I was fortunate to get a few higher profile opportunities, which were this is always nice to get because it gets your name out there. And then also very cool to do some of my sound design process for most of those jobs, which is what I like to do the most.
Okay, so I want to unpack all of that because it's just so amazing. We could be here forever with you, but we won't. Don't worry. Two of those things that I want to go to. I want to talk about those earth tones that you're speaking of,
Sure.
and then I also want to talk about the mental health aspect because I think, especially right now, with coming out of COVID, we're all struggling to some degree with that, let
Yeah.
alone the ones that unfortunately struggled with that prior to. So before we get into the mental health, your earth tones. Now, you spoke right before that that you did something with Adidas, picking up sounds from nature for their shoe. Can you go ahead and unpack that one for us?
Yeah. So I had a colleague and a friend who's still collaborating with me on the Earth Tones project, just independently with myself. But she's also a music supervisor, and her name's Sarah. And her and I have been working together, collaborating for a number of years. And at the time, she was working for Vice, and so she was my referral point for that job because they were looking to make some. They had a promo they were going to air on Vice for this shoe. It was called the Parley, and it was all made out of recycled plastic from the oceans. With, I'm pretty sure it was a lot of the funds were going to ocean conservation. I don't remember the exact percentages or exact splits or how it all worked, but the whole idea was to promote conservation and promote, saving the ocean and cleaning things up through this amazing shoe that they created. And so they were looking for music and score that for this ad that would be kind of organic and unique and something interesting. And so when she mentioned the kind of work that I do, it just seemed like a great fit. And so when I was brought in, I sort of started designing something and then kind of working with, I think it was about a 4 minute spot or something like that aired on Vice around 2018. So it was about 5 years ago. And just made this really cool piece of music that's mostly has like 90% ocean sound, and then with some other instrumentation splashed in. And it was just a very cool sort of merging between an advertisement that was for something commercial, but also really fit into the aesthetic of what I was doing creatively. And those are the kind of jobs I try to take on as ones that fit well with the aesthetic of what I'm already doing on my own.
Okay, so is that how earth tones came about? Or did you already have it established, or did you get this offer, hey, make these sounds from the ocean, and then that's kind of what started that ball rolling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was already rolling at that point.
Okay.
It started in 2012. I had an idea. I'd already been playing around with sound design and trying different things with sound for film clients, but I was kind of just getting started at that point I've been producing music a long time, but this was sort of my new way I wanted to try to do it. So in 2012, I got selected to go to Svalbard, which is the Arctic region, about 500 miles from the geographic North Pole. It was part of a travel competition, and I wrote an essay on why, you had to write an essay on why you should go. That was how they were going to determine the winner. And so I wrote about this idea I had about turning earth sound into music. So once they sent me there, that kind of started the whole thing. And then I was developing it for the next number of years, and it was kind of by good fortune that clients started asking me to do it as they learned about it. Because, I go to meetings and we talk business, and then they say, what else are you working on? I would tell them. They were very interested. Different clients were interested in it.
Okay.
And so it seemed it was resonating with people. And so like Blood Memory was the first film, because we started developing that in 2016, where they asked me to specifically do my earth tones process for the film. And then Vice was kind of the next one. I had been doing some other sound design for some other projects. It wasn't necessarily earth-based. It was like turn skateboards into drums, turn basketballs into percussion, things like that for other clients. So it was exciting when it kind of merged fully with the earth thing, because that was something I was pushing on my own. And then as business interests started to align with that, it seemed like a really cool opportunity to expand it more.
That sounds fascinating. And so go ahead and tell our viewers, what is earth tones? Now you just mentioned you went close to the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to different ends of the earth to get these sounds? I mean, it sounds pretty impressive that people are trusting you to go out, travel the world, and bring back sounds that nature, or did you also say animals produce these sounds as well?
Yeah, both landscapes that are natural. I record, glaciers, mountains, trees, all sorts of different earth elements, and then a ton of different wildlife as well. When I had the concept, so Earth Tone started as just a sound project. It was originally just going to be sound and music, and the only reason it turned into a film was because so many people were encouraging me to film it. and I never really thought about documenting it in that way. But so many people would say, "Can we see what you're doing? How do you do it? What's the process like? How do you record an elk, or how do you, how what goes into this?" And so, after getting so much feedback, which kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about sort of finding your purpose, is so much of it for me was just listening to what people were telling me, and this reoccurring thing that seemed to be across the board consistent. Everyone kept like really locking in on this one thing that I was doing. I'm like, maybe I should pursue that more. Maybe there's something there. So I started filming it, and then it just turned into a really expansive project as I got more excited about what I was doing, because I was producing it on my own. I was branching off to do individual jobs for clients based on their what their needs were, but the overarching Earth Tones thing that I'm completing now was my own creation. And so, yeah, I was traveling all over the place. And then once I kind of had a vision board of animals I wanted to record, places I wanted to see, to kind of complete the sort of circular vision I had in my head of different spots and different elements, I just went on all these different pursuits to try to track them down and pull it off. And that's why it took a long time, because recording animals is a very time consuming process. And getting to a lot of these places is very time consuming, and takes a lot of energy and effort to do that, and especially to do it the right way, where you're really respecting nature and not being super invasive.
Okay, so that's also an element I didn't even think about. That's so respectful. We need to talk louder. Okay. That's very respectful, is you want to go into nature and you don't want to disturb it. You want to be in its element and kind of be part of it. And as I'm very big about being organic, you had to implement that to get really a true sound, because things do change when elements of a human comes into a place that's maybe not so used to seeing a human. So go ahead and tell us, to add the entertaining aspect, go ahead and tell us maybe one of your wildest stories or adventures or cool things that would tickle our ear.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one that seems to really resonate, because I just started doing some presentations of kind of a preview of what I'm doing. And one story that seems to resonate with people a lot is, because I went to record alligators during their mating season where they bellow. And that was a really interesting process, because I attempted it for probably about a month straight, about 4 weeks of every day trying to get this sound. And it was extremely difficult to get, because you have to go in early in the morning. That's usually typically when they do it, is very early in the morning. But in the morning is also...
Alligator, is that too much? Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
What's that? Yeah, so in the morning is when they naturally hunt. And it's also dark. But if the challenge I had was, if they knew I was there, they probably weren't going to bellow. But if they didn't know I was there, or had mistaken me for something else, there was a safety element that I had to be aware of to make sure that I wasn't appearing. They don't actively hunt or attack people as nearly as much as people think. It's extremely rare. They actually have a very bad reputation for attacking people, and it's very, very rare. But they can mistake a person for a bird, or something along those lines, especially in shadowed morning time, when it's dark, and if you're crouched down low and trying to be incognito. So I had to balance that. So the morning I actually got the bellows was very interesting, because when I got there, it was a super thick cover of fog. And I had been kind of consulting with an alligator biologist throughout this entire process, and sort of urging them to give me an opportunity to access these areas earlier in the morning, because I didn't think I was going to get it otherwise. And so that final morning, when I finally got it, it was just, I had to go into full fog, couldn't see anything, knowing there's alligators all over the place, and kind of sneak in where they didn't really realize that I was there, then get in position. But then that was the thing that made it successful, because they all finally did get out of the water and bellow all at the same time. So it was definitely a crazy adventure, just because of how hard I had to work to get that one sound, and how many different things I had to endure, from the heat to the bugs, because those areas can be difficult to stay in all day. But the sound is so incredible and amazing that it was worth getting.
Yeah. Now, may I ask, what did you do with those sounds? Where did you end up using them?
So those are part of what I'm finishing now, which is the entire documentary is being edited now, along with all the songs that are attached to it. And all of those songs have those sounds being built in. So for example, the alligators, I use a lot of their bass tones and their low frequencies to create bass patterns and melodic low-end pulses and things like that. A glacier cracking might be like a drum. A log snapping might be like the sound of what would be a snare drum or percussion instrument. Elk song can be melodies. walrus breath can be like a, you know, percussive pulse. So it all kind of gets built into it. And then the documentary has all that music in it in a really immersive way, but also shows the process of the different adventures that it took to record them.
Wow, I feel there are no words to really describe how phenomenal of a project you're making, and I can't wait for us to check it out. So before we get to the mental health of kind of your heart,
Sure.
of how you marry the two, or how you work with them together, go ahead and speak to the person, because we also want to inspire them.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone out there, it could be two different ways, that are seeing that you're a musician and you're a composer and you're doing something completely out of the box.
Yeah.
Which I want to commend you to the nth degree, that you had the courage and you had the tenacity to go after it, because I'm sure putting your life at stake to find alligators and get this sound, but you're going after your dream. Someone's watching this and they're like, you know what? I want to do something like that. How do I get started? Or where was the light bulb moment that you were like, I can make this a reality? And I know that's going to be hard to capsulize in a quick, but inspire that person that's really triggered by everything you're saying.
Well, what I would say is, you know, one of the biggest things for me that was a huge light bulb was the continual process of getting people to encourage me with this crazy idea. Right? Like, I mean, just getting the trip to Svalbard, when I sent that off, I thought there's no way I'm going to get that, but that was fun. I never thought in a million years you could win a trip to the Arctic, because we had entered travel competitions and, you know, mostly it's just throw your name in a hat. But because that had an essay and I wrote about an original idea, someone said, we want to send you there. Wow. So that idea that someone could, even if it's a company or whoever, and then that continually happened, whether it be someone saying you should film it, or we'd like to hire you to do your earth tones process for us. It just kind of shows that people, like human beings, are interested in other human beings that have creative ideas, or someone who's following their own path, and it can be easy to lose your courage to do that. But if you can follow through with some original idea you have, even if you think it's crazy or outside the box, someone else may really resonate with so many people. Yeah. But it has to come from you first. And so for me, I found so much of my path by looking more inward. You know, I think we focus so much sometimes on external noise. Yes, yeah. And by going back to my kind of true nature, I started to find so many things that had been there all along that were kind of right in front of my face. Things that I was excited about since I was a kid. Yeah. Animals, music, sound, travel, being in my own kind of solo space to be introspective. Those are all things that I'd been doing since I was 10 years old. But once I started to see other people echo those things as I sort of went off to this, you know, left field path, it just felt so good to realize that people are seeing me as I really was. And that made me want to keep going farther. So what I would say is just don't be afraid of an idea being too left field or too outside the box or too experimental. You never really know where an idea can take you. It could redefine your entire life and then get you in a place that you've always wanted to be. So at least for me, that's really how it happened.
Well, I definitely concur with that. I feel most of us have our gifts, our talents, our purpose, our callings inside of us. Yeah. And it's the outside world, as you were mentioning, the externals that tell us you can, and it's not real, and it's not going to happen, and you're not good enough, and it's not meant to be. Yeah. And when you're a trailblazer like yourself, you have to set a trail that no one else has walked on, or at least to that capacity. Yeah. And I want to commend you on that, because you are inspiring so many people, and this is truly, you know, you talk about a glacier that you recorded. This is truly, I believe, the tip of the iceberg for you. And I think you're going to see that you're a trailblazer where other people are going to start mimicking and duplicating. And I don't want to say, I was thinking intimidating, but that's not the word. Imitating what you're doing, which is a form of flattery. And when you're confident enough of who you are, you give them your blessings. But sometimes we can get a little jealous or insecure because someone's trying to be like you. But all it really is, in my opinion, is you've sparked something inside of someone else that was once a 10-year-old kid that had all those components, and someone said no. Yeah. And you stepped outside that box. So just for sake of time, to respect the time that we have you, go ahead and tell us how the mental health and the earth tones, how you brought them together, or
Yeah.
how you use them together.
Yeah, sure. So I've had mental health issues going back to childhood, you know, so for me it's pretty chronic and all the time. So for anyone out there who's has those, I totally, you know, feel you. I've had chronic depression, you know, obsessive compulsive disorder, insomnia, bad anxiety, you know, all that stuff at any one time flaring up more than the other or all together. So it's always been a struggle. But what I realized was as I was doing my time in nature, I was finding that by getting more in tune with nature, I was getting more in tune with my true nature. All this external noise and kind of wires that had been crossed over the years of just who knows, you know, you're going through life, like you said, you're focused on so many different things. And that was making my mental health worse in a lot of ways, is focusing on all these external things. But having this quiet time to reflect and getting closer to nature, I started noticing how not only were my mental health issues more manageable as I got closer to animals and closer to nature and had this introspective meditative time, but also that they were actually useful. Like being a OCD, for example, was very useful doing the alligators because it was kind of this constant repetitive process. You had to be kind of obsessed to do it because it was so hot and so uncomfortable at times. And most people would just like, I forget it. It's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
So my obsessive thinking was like kind of a superpower in that instance. And so as I started thinking about, I had a friend who, as I was halfway through this process, said, "What's your human story? That's what you have to find for your project."
Oh, tell the camera, ask
Yeah.
them that question.
So it was like, you know, the nature stuff is great. That's super cool. You got something amazing here, but try to find out what your human story is, and then you really have something. And I didn't know what that was at first. Again, it was right in front of my face. It was my story, but I think I was maybe too scared to share it, or didn't feel it was worthy, or all that external noise, this story we tell ourselves. So once I kind of got more open to the idea that it was my story, I started going, okay, well, there's the sound design. That's a process that evolved. That's a story. But what's the other story? And the other story was how I was overcoming so many of my mental health issues slowly and, you know, painfully at times, but overcoming them through this process. And I thought maybe that's something I should share with people so that there's some sense of hope, because there is like a point in the process of telling the story of the film where like I had a suicide attempt, and then you see my entire life after that. And everything you see after that day is this beautiful life that could have slipped away. And so I want to share the message to people is, you know, you can push through and find a new way of living, but sometimes you have to overcome a lot of uncomfortable moments to get there. And I'm proof that it can be done. Not to say you have to do exactly like I did, but like I'm still here and I stuck around and now I'm, you know, living life. It's not all perfect, but I've gotten to a better place because I didn't do anything stupid or rash or you know, quick impulse decision, luckily. And so much of that came from nature, which is free for everybody, and anyone can access it, and anyone can go use it however it works for them. And so I think that was something that I started to kind of warm up to the idea that, you know, maybe I should be out sharing this message, and even if it helps one or two people, that's something I'd be happy with.
Yeah, well, that again is beautiful in every sense of the word. I could take a bunch of those nuggets and talk to you more about them, and I am so thankful that you were not successful in that day.
Yeah,
very
for sure.
And you have a family now, and
Yep.
you have a successful business, and what's beautiful is you're sharing beauty with everyone, which is yourself, and also what nature, the beauty nature has. We have a child that struggles with some things, and he told us one day when he ran off and sat in a tree, and he named the tree Jungle, and it's a special little place that he goes to when his feelings are more than he can bear, or he doesn't know how to communicate. And he says nature always gives you what you need.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I truly believe that.
Yeah, I've had so many instances over the years where at first I thought they were coincidences, you know, and then it just became too consistent to be a coincidence, where it was the universe or nature or the earth delivering exactly what I needed at the right moment. Maybe not always when I thought I deserved it or whatever, because, you know, whether I was entitled to something, wanted it too fast or whatever, would make me earn it, but I would find the universe would deliver when I really needed it. And it was just such a beautiful thing to just kind of ride that wave and be open to that. And it really did help me reframe how I saw myself, how I interacted with the world. And I didn't talk about it for a long time. And one of the things I've learned by now kind of consulting with other true mental health professionals, because I'm just an artist, who struggles with these things, getting more educated all the time, but realizing how much statistical data that there is behind talking about it and the impact it has. And that's why it's so important to talk about it and be open about it, because it does make a huge difference in reducing the impacts of whether it be, suicide or self-harm or just people's compulsions or addictions or whatever, just getting it out in the open and talking about it. So it's something that, and especially with kids, I'm working right now trying to develop versions of my Earth Tones project that I can present to kids to help kids with their mental health and connect with nature. Because I'm learning through some consultation that there's a really big need for that in terms of alternative art-based programs for children. So hoping to be able to do that, because I think so much of what causes our mental health starts in childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we carry
childhood trauma and the anxiety that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to deal with. And when you're a child, you don't know how to talk about it or deal with it because you don't even know what's going on. And there are health professionals out there that are saying if we look at everything that we struggle, from our relationships to our careers to our mental state, it can all be traced back to childhood trauma. And but not to focus on a negative thing. In closing, there's someone that's watching this that's saying, yes, I'm struggling with mental health. Yes, I am a musician, because I really, having studied people and things of that nature, I have found some of the people that have the greatest struggles are the ones that have the greatest calling. And the ones that struggle so much mentally and emotionally, besides, any childhood trauma, is because of their gifts inside of them, that creativity that the world at this point in time doesn't really know what to do with, because it doesn't fit in a box. So the child's very soul and spirit is squashed. And speak to that musician, that composer right now that hasn't touched an instrument, wasn't successful on a song, because we know there's more stories of that than the success stories like yourself.
Absolutely.
That they're like, Bill, William, and I said both his names because if you're a friend or you want to look at him professionally, that they're like, that's not my story. But you said a minute ago, like, find your human story. Speak to that person that's at that place that you were, and they don't know where to go but down. How can you lift them up? How can you encourage them?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would say is it's so much power, I think, comes from reframing how you view struggle. Like being out in nature taught me to embrace struggle and discomfort as part of a process of life, instead of always thinking, woe is me, it's so bad. I would overblow the struggles in my mind to it felt like my whole life was a struggle. But in nature, a hike is a struggle, but it's also a beautiful experience because it's a struggle, and then you get to the top, and a metaphor that I really like, and it kind of speaks to what you were talking about. In audio, the most sensitive microphone is the one you want, right? Because it picks up the most sound, it covers the most frequencies, it captures the most data is coming into it. And so in audio, you want a sensitive microphone. But sometimes I think as sensitive people, we can almost feel like that's a weakness or something. But it isn't, because it's the same concept. You're just, so much more is coming in. You're absorbing so much more than maybe some other people, or maybe people would if they're tuned out of it or whatnot. So what I would say is, if you're really struggling, is just like, it's okay to be struggling. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It can pass. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. But think of it from that perspective of that sensitivity can also be used for great good. It can be used to push you forward. It's not always, it has its downsides or things you should have to cope with when you're overly, sensitive in that way. But it also can lead to, like you said, all these beautiful things that you can either create or do. And I've had a really long journey. I mean, I've worked on this Earth Tones project for 10 years. And it's only really now that it's finally getting to reach people and being all put together. And so I'm kind of just a good example for anyone who feels like things are taking too long or it's never going to get better, that there was a drastic difference between me 5-6 years ago and now. But it took a lot of just patience to get there. And I just kept continually chipping away, one little chip at a time, whether it be one little bit on my work or on my brain. It was one little tiny puzzle piece at a time. I didn't try to fix it all at once. And once I started just being okay with the work I was doing in small increments, I started to feel better about it instead of trying to solve all my problems in one swoop.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you so much for having us, for sharing your heart, and we'll play maybe some B-roll with some music in the background that you've created. And I just want to encourage you, like Bill said, find your human story, find your purpose, find your calling. You may go through hard days. I don't know anyone great that hasn't gone through hard days, to be honest with you. So you can, as Bill said, change your perspective. Instead of woe is me, what about wow me? Because I'm going through a struggle, I'm going through darkness, I'm closed off from the world and I don't know how to get back up. Be like, wow, all the greats had this moment. And I believe in you, and I believe in your purpose, and I believe in your calling. Like Bill said, some of us are hypersensitive. Ask my husband. I cry at the drop of a hat, but I am just so sensitive. And I'm sensitive to the reality that some of you are watching this, and you just don't think you're going to make it. You don't think you could be Bill. You can't. You can't be Bill. That's his gift. That's his talent. But you can be you, and you are equally powerful. You are equally bold. You are equally beautiful. So please turn off the noise from the world that has made you desensitized to your purpose and your calling. Go out, like our friend said, in nature and just listen. And in that, may you hear the still small voice of the Creator that made you to do exactly what you're about to do.
Pads allow me to take a glacier, like all of these sounds in here are from a glacier in Alaska. So I can essentially load them and then play them as drums. Which is just, it's very, very useful to take all the different sounds I've recorded and load them into all of my equipment and play them musically rather than just sample or loop them. It lets me use my musicality with the Earth sound instead of just doing it all in the computer.
I have no words. Is that not amazing? Like, do people just come in here and just minds are blown of what you
people
just
do
did?
dig the studio, yeah. Everyone always says they like the vibe in here, so yeah.
I mean, those were glaciers. So that sound, you made literal music out of glaciers.
Yeah, so like that whole piece that I was just playing along with, 90-ish% of it is made out of glaciers. Even the melodies and stuff are taken from little organic melodic tones that I pulled out of ice, or the way it creaks or cracks, or let's see if I can quickly just pull one up.
Genius, musical genius. And to think this is a man that had a day where he thought his life wasn't worth living. I'm encouraging you.
Like
don't
this
give
one.
up.
Like that's a glacier, but it has a little. You can hear a little melody. So it's got an actual pitch to it, and you can take that and arrange. So lots that can be done. Lots of time spent experimenting and digging around.
Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to know more about Bill and what he's doing, some of the projects he's done, we're going to have the links below. Please share, give him kudos, support him, be a part of what he's doing. It's music that's healing, and it's helping in mental health. It's helping in every aspect, because music is healing. Bill, do you have anything else when we close that you wanted to say?
No, just thanks for everyone out there for listening. And like I said before, if you're going through a hard time, just know that it absolutely can get better. It might just take time, and just keep going, just keep living your life. Stick around.
chills. I just feel an anointing. I feel a blessing. I feel inspired, and I feel the weight of the world lifting off. That's just a little bit of what Bill does. I can't wait to hear more. I'm Faerie Grace, and you're amazing.